This is the Wide Format Impressions broadcast. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Dan Marks. Seeking to improve quality, speed, production, and address an ongoing shortage of qualified labor, wide format producers are looking toward automation as a solution. And whether it's software solutions, material movement, robotics, and even AI, the possibilities are promising. To learn more about what producers are doing and not doing to automate production, I'm happy to welcome Lisa Cross, Principal Analyst at Alliance Research. Welcome, Lisa. Great to talk to you again.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
It's great to have you back. Before we get into our conversation, I want to mention that the data you're presenting in this discussion is from three separate surveys. There's Efficiency Unleashed, exploring automation in wide format printing, the Printing United Alliance State of the Industry Survey, and the survey AI Adoption from Curiosity to Competitive Advantage. And this is all data from this year, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. All three studies were conducted in 2025. So we're working with very fresh data on this topic, which I think makes the information particularly valuable because it's from 2025 and because it's not just one study that we're showing various things that are happening with regard to automation for wide format providers very broadly across many pain points. And I think that some of the data you're going to ask me about really paints a fuller picture of where automation and robotics and artificial intelligence stand right now and where they're headed.
Okay. Let's start with what's motivating wide format producers to automate their processes. What challenges are they most looking to address and why?
Wide format producers, what we see in our research data is basically they're facing what I'd say a trifecta of challenges. And that trifecta is rising labor shortages. We hear that quite frequently, ongoing pressure to meet tighter turnaround times, the complexity of juggling short run, highly customized jobs. Those are the three big challenges. And automation is increasingly seen as a way not just to ease those pressures, but actually to turn them into competitive strengths. I think of it like this. If you're struggling with staff or speed, automation can step in as both a workforce multiplier and a quality enforcer. It's about creating smoother workflows so your team can focus on higher value tasks, not repetitive ones.
And with so much focus on automation, do we know the benefits are worth the effort? And what are some of the outcomes you've identified? And what are the benefits wide format companies are experiencing?
To answer your first question, is it worth it? I would say absolutely. And the numbers in our most recent research study, Efficiency Unleashed, exploring automation in wide format printing, really back that up. 3 out of 4 survey respondents told us that automation helped them to increase their volume capacity. And another 71% told us that automation helped them to meet their customer demands for faster delivery. And 56% said that automation helped them to improve staff satisfaction because it's not always about your external customer. Sometimes it's about your internal customer. Also, wide format providers indicated in our study that automation led to increases in volume capacity, enabled service expansion offering, and really helped to shift the time that their staff spent from lower value tasks to higher value tasks. And just beyond the numbers, automation really is becoming a business enabler, and we're finding that companies today are using it to expand their offerings, to take on more profitable jobs, and improve relationships with customers. And it's really moving from being nice to have to I can't compete without it.
When I looked at some of the data, I noticed that automation is like leading a healthy lifestyle. Most people agree it's a good thing, but not nearly as many are doing it. Can you describe this dissonance as it relates to automation and why do you think that exists?
Sure. I think that's a great analogy, Dan. You really hit it on the head there with the lifestyles, knowing it's good, but not wanting to do it. Yeah, I think that all businesses know that automation is beneficial. And in our research study, 84% of wide format providers really say it's essential today to staying competitive. But yeah, there's a disconnect. Two-thirds report that their operations are only minimally or not automated at all. So the big question, why is that? And we think there's a few things. First, the barrier to entry, actually taking the steps to automate an operation, can feel intimidating to an organization, whether it's the cost, the complexity, just not really knowing where to start, or even convincing staff because any change effort in an organization, it will not work unless your staff is on board supporting it. Another thing, every job in wide format is unique, which can make standardizing processes harder than perhaps in other print segments. And finally, there's some skepticism, especially around new technologies that could help with automation like AI and robotics. So I think the disconnect stems from a couple of key friction points: high perceived costs and complexity, uncertainty also about ROI, and labor skills gap and lack of standardization. And one thing I would also add here that, like starting a fitness regime, companies know they should do it, but find it hard to commit without a clear and manageable entry point
Hmm.
and strategy.
Okay.
Nothing succeeds without that.
And among those companies making investments in wide format automation, what are they choosing to adopt and what do they seem to be less interested in doing?
What we're seeing is companies are taking a very strategic and phased approach in automation investment, and popular automation technologies include job onboarding software, finishing systems, web to print systems, things that deliver immediate gains and might be a little bit easier to implement. There's less uptake right now in technologies like robotics and artificial intelligence. And that's not because there's no interest, but because those feel like heavier lifts or there's more uncertainty surrounding newer technologies than automation technologies that have been around for a while. And what we find in all of our research studies is that print providers, whatever segment of the market they're serving, their strategy is often they wanna crawl before they walk. And among those investing in automation, we see that current adoption does tend to be highest in workflow software, web to print, and finishing automation, and less adopted but growing in areas like robotics, AI-based decision-making tools, and automated substrate handling. So companies are being selective and strategic, and they're looking to choose those tools that they believe deliver the most benefit and are closely matched with their production realities.
Okay. And since you're a statistician and I'm not, I'm going to speculate a little bit. When you look at robotics, I think the assumption is that is a huge investment to get into, even though I think there are scaled levels of robotics depending on how you define that. I would also say with AI, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, there are a lot of solutions out here, but it's a little bit Wild West now. Do you think AI solutions will be integrated more into the software we use and into the systems we use in our shops as that sort of settles out?
My opinion on that is yes, that there are going to be certain things that organizations are going to actively pursue. And then there are things that are going to be integrated in software. And something that I wonder is, are we going to be doing AI or is AI going to be doing us? Because I'm sure you notice it in all of the different tools you use on a daily basis, how much smarter they're getting and how they're anticipating what you're going to do. And they're asking you questions. I know a lot of the tools I work with are doing that now.
Yeah, I think you get to a point where it's almost unwise to say AI can't do that because tomorrow it may prove you wrong. It's moving so fast at this point. So
Yes.
Looking at the near term, then, let's say in the next 24 months or so, which automation technologies are wide format producers most interested in adding? Where are they going to make their investments, do you think?
In terms of our survey, because I like to use what we see in our results lots of times to answer those types of questions. And in our most recent survey, about 76% said they plan to invest in automation in the next 2 years. And I think it's important to put that number out there. Just no matter what people are investing in, there is an investment intention. So 76% plan to invest in automation in the next 2 years. And most of those investments that companies are aiming at, they're more moderate. And we had asked what the average spend was going to be or what the average budget was going to be for investment in new technology, and it was just under $100,000. What does that tell us? It tells us that organizations are being smart and selective, and that most companies are making moderate investments, and that there is growing interest in technologies that are going to make a higher impact without a lot of disruption. That's
Mhm.
another thing. Not so much we see in our data, but what we hear when we do interviews with wide format providers. Because lots of times when we do surveys, we also do telephone interviews to get a little more insight underneath the data.
Printing United Alliance is the leading member based printing and graphic arts association in North America with over 70 years of history and more than 20,000 members worldwide. We're here to support printing professionals like you with the tools, resources, and information you need to grow your business, sharpen your skills, and expand your network. Whether you're a printer, supplier, student, or educator, we've built our community to serve everyone who's passionate about the future of print. An Alliance membership is a smart, cost-effective way to stay current on the latest trends, connect with industry leaders, and give your business the competitive edge it deserves. Head over to printing.org/membership to learn more about the memberships we offer. Let's move the printing industry forward together.
Just given your experience in doing surveys in the printing industry, people say they plan to make investments in the year ahead. By and large, how do those numbers hold up in reality if you ask them a year later? Did they make those investments or?
Most times I would say yes. Today, we're in a little bit trickier environment with tariffs. I know we're not talking about those today, but a lot of wide format providers are holding off on
Sure.
making investments and planning because they're just not sure what to do. But lots of times in our surveys, when somebody tells us they're going to make a certain investment in the next 12 months,
Mhm.
typically they are because they've done the diligence and it's something that they've been looking at, unless something catastrophic happens for them
Sure.
to not make it. But I would say typically, yeah, that our data does hold up and that those that say they are going to make an investment typically do.
I would like to talk a little bit more about robotics at Printing United Expo, which is coming up in October. Obviously, you could see numerous examples of robotics out on the expo floor. And how many wide format producers are moving into that? Some of the systems you see these giant robotic arms picking up and placing substrate here and there. We see finishing technologies that will pick and place cut pieces. But what are they investing in terms of robotics? And are a lot of companies looking at the possibilities of robotics?
Yeah, we asked about robotics in our recent wide format automation survey, and 54% of our respondents said they were actively exploring robotics in their operation. And a key reason is that they saw how robotics can help address labor shortages. Other data that we had on robotics is that we had asked about the timeline. Was there a timeline that you had for when you might expect to make a major investment in robotics? And actually, 3% said that within a year they had plans to invest in robotics, and 29% within the next 3 years. And in addition, we had asked about budgets. Do you have a budget for robotics? And 3% currently did, and 45% said they plan to have one within 3 years. In terms of what types of robotics they're investing in, I don't have hard numbers on that. But our speculation based on our conversation, it are the things that you were talking about. Many times it's arms. And if anyone was at FESPA, I was not at FESPA in
Mhm.
the last year. There were a lot of robotic arm systems on display there. And lots of times what on the show floor and what maybe you'll see the same thing at our show, Printing United Expo coming up in
Mhm.
October in Orlando. You'll see more of these arms. But I think that's where most of the investment is because you're moving the pallets, you're helping staff. You don't have your staff members doing a lot of heavy lifting,
Sure.
which can lead to injuries and whatnot. But that's what our data and insight says with regard to robotics.
And in terms of robotics, where do you think the dividing line between what we would just consider mechanical automation and robotics, where do those divide? What makes something robotic?
I would consider a robot an arm
Hmm.
that's moving something versus mechanical automation, which might keep a sheet in line
Sure.
or a vacuum frame or something like that. That's where I think I would draw the line. Is it something that's replacing a person, right? Like maybe a person moved that material. Now you have a robotic arm
Mhm.
moving it. Or if you're talking about an autonomous guided vehicle, maybe someone on your staff pulled that material to where it had to go, but now you have a guided vehicle doing it. That's how I would define robotics. How would you define it?
Some of the stuff I've read relates to, yeah, it replaces the capabilities of a human to do certain things. One thing I read about is you could consider an ATM machine to be a robot that takes the place of a bank teller. You could consider
Good.
optical systems, camera systems on printing presses or finishing systems that monitor quality as a robot because it's taking place of a person standing there looking at each sheet coming off. So
We've had robotics a long time.
yeah, to some degree, it has been with us a long time, depending on how you
Yeah.
define it. Obviously, all robots are not like 1950s humanoid robots.
Not like Danger Will Robinson.
Yeah. So it's interesting to consider that. And I'd also like to ask you about AI, artificial intelligence, which brings about some pretty exciting automation opportunities. How do you find format producers are currently using it in production based on what you found?
Some of the ways that we're seeing wide format print providers actively using AI. Let's define it. They're actively doing something. They're not just it's not happening in a software that they bought without them working on it, if that's making any sense at all. But what we found out in our upcoming study, which we're about to launch, we're going to launch it in September, and we'll be talking a lot more at it at Expo, AI adoption in the printing industry from curiosity to competitive advantage. Some of the things that wide format print providers told us, a top response, and this is our top response across all segments, is that they're using generative AI for design applications and copywriting. Like most people, it's a tool that everybody can use without a lot of pain, without a lot of investment. And it's a way to test the waters and get used to using it. Lots of people using it in marketing applications, like looking to personalize emails and marketing materials. And then others are using it for customer supports, chatbots, and virtual assistants to interact with their customers. And then some organizations are using it to help with job scheduling and workflow automation. So really a mix of marketing and operational tasks, but the bulk is more in marketing applications.
Do you think AI is like automation in general? Everybody agrees it will help, but not a lot of people have a set strategy in place.
I think that's a fair assessment. And we did ask in our survey about that. Did you have a formal AI strategy in place? Are you looking to develop one? Or did you have no strategy in place? And of course, the top response, over half, did not have a strategy in place, but 7% did, and 35% were developing a strategy. So I think today people are trying to figure out what next steps are.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be next, that they're gonna realize because the leaders we do have data where we've compared leaders to laggards, and the leaders definitely have a strategy, and they've assigned responsibility. That's another thing. A lot of times people just give their staff some guidelines. Here, learn about AI, just don't do this. And that's really not enough. You have to have somebody in charge guiding people, or the organization itself needs to guide people. And we're starting to see that happen, but it has not yet arrived en masse.
I know in terms of putting together an AI strategy, it's got to be challenging now because everything's changing so quickly. You get a strategy in place and it's obsolete by the time it comes off the printer. How do you
Sure.
deal
I
with that?
don't know that it's moving that fast. I'm not.
Wow.
I use AI quite a bit in my job, and I'm
Mhm.
sure they do too. And there are certain things we're supposed to do and not supposed to do.
Sure.
And I think with a lot of things, whether it's changing it rapidly or not, you still need to have some type of overarching strategy to guide your company's implementation and direction.
Right. Like a real
Otherwise,
foundation
yeah,
of
yes,
how are we going to do this?
yes,
Finally, I'd like to talk about some key takeaways that you've pulled out from these surveys. So, how would you advise wide format producers to better align themselves to take advantage of the sort of segment wide movement toward automation?
sure. The first thing I would say is in any investment you're going to make, don't wait for perfection. Start where you are. Start your process by identifying, what are your key workflow friction points and how are you going to address them? Start small, focus on the small wins, maybe things like auto nesting, digital proofing, or streamlining approvals. I just listed those off the top of my head, but whatever it is in your organization to get started. But just make sure that you've done some type of assessment and you actually know what those key friction points are. Remember that success it's not always about the tools. It's also about leadership. So you always need a strategy that, aligns automation with your business goals and customer expectations. And any automation investment you make, it should be deliberate and not reactive. And the earlier you start, the faster you'll gain a competitive advantage. Transformation rewards those willing to take the risk, I guess you'd say, the bold and the prepared. So I do have 5 points that I always think about with regard to how to do that alignment, and that's have goals, identify the friction points, build momentum with small wins, invest in your people as
Mhm.
much as technology because they are a critical point of making automation work, and don't wait too long because your competitors certainly are not.
I love that you touched on the cultural aspect of building support for automation. I think within cultures, the bringing in of automation tools can sometimes be seen as a threat, not as an opportunity among workers who fear for their jobs. So building that
Sure.
culture, explaining the purpose of it is paramount.
That's hugely important, right? Because if your staff thinks that you're trying to automate them out of a job, they're going to do everything they can to make your effort fail.
Mhm. And I know you mentioned this a little bit, but you'll be
Mhm.
presenting some of the AI focused information at Printing United Expo in October.
Yes. A couple of things, and I don't have the dates handy,
And
but
post those.
there is a presentation on wide format automation
Mhm.
during the expo education session. We also have an AI presentation where we're going to be presenting the results from our research study on the same track. And then there's going to be, is it a special interest section on the floor?
Yeah, it will be a special interest area, really
Okay.
focusing on AI solutions for the printing industry.
Yeah, we're going to give two presentations there. The schedule has not been set, but we're going to be talking there and we're going to be handing out our AI report as well,
Fantastic.
a
Lisa
printed version.
Cross, so nice to talk to you today, as always,
Dan,
and have a great day.
you too.
You've been listening to the Wide Format Impressions broadcast. You can find more great content at wideformatimpressions.com.